in several major cities, so we'll talk through this as well.
That's right. In today's big deal, we'll have your
right now, and they packed a punch yesterday in terms of some strong winds that we saw over parts of Oklahoma. Now, as it's transitioned through Missouri, really turned into a big rain concern, and that's the case as it moves over into western Kentucky and even parts of West Tennessee. So watching just this big flare up of moisture right here. All the energy driving this is right up here. You see the upper level low. It's spinning and pivoting right down now into Iowa. There's some stronger jet stream winds right across that area, right across eastern Iowa into Chicago, northern Illinois. And so that's all going to be a factor in where we see storms throughout the day today, all the pieces that we're going to put together. But this cluster of rain and thunderstorms, we're keeping an eye on for some heavy concerns here with some of that rainfall. Very prolific lightning makers, and with that comes some bigger rainfall rates. And we're seeing that right now across northern Tennessee, getting into Nashville, yes, especially on the north side of town. The biggest totals that we've seen so far have been pretty significant. We've had some rainfall estimates in Missouri of more than 7.5 inches. There's a zone right here that did stretch over I-55, some near Springfield as well, especially just south of there, of more than 5 inches. So this whole storm system has a history of tapping into the moisture, being efficient at using it, and bringing some heavy rainfall. There is a flood watch up across this area through this morning. It goes to about 10 o'clock for a lot of spots here. And we'll be watching for still, again, the existing rain in the area. We'll see if some new stuff does form. I mean, the instability is still in place, and I think that the jet stream energy will help as well. Let's look at Nashville, closer view. We've got showers out there for you. They're not severe right now. The lightning is the main risk, but they're not bringing any strong winds. That may change through the day today. We've got that concern for storms, which may go severe all across the zone from parts of the Tennessee River Valley right into the Mid-Atlantic and even the Northeast. Greg.
Well, Jen, recovery efforts continue.
The deadly campfire that burned Paradise, California in 2018, becoming the nation's deadliest wildfire in more than a century. As recovery efforts get underway, the immediate focus is on Maui in the town of Lahaina. Meteorologist Kelly Cass has more. Firefighters are still searching for clues as to what started the fire. Coming up later this hour, our Justin Michaels takes us into neighborhoods outside Lahaina destroyed by the raging wildfires, where we'll see thunderstorms on Tuesday. We've got the risk for severe weather, and we extend all the way down from southern New England all the way back down here through parts of the Mid-Atlantic. You're most likely to get severe weather into parts of Maryland, Delaware. We're watching all the way down into North Carolina. So as we see that front move east, Greg talked about how it's kind of fall-like behind it. There will be a drop in dew points, but out ahead of it, plenty of moisture in place, kind of pooling ahead of this cold front. And so that's the instability, part of the instability that we have to work with out there. The fact that, we'll have some storms going overnight, but then we reset on Tuesday, and now we've got the daytime heating. That adds to the instability as well. So we pick it up at 6 a.m., and we watch for new thunderstorms then to develop as we get throughout the day. Now we start to see the afternoon showers and storms, coupled with some of that energy that we're going to be looking at here, and really all levels of the atmosphere. We've got the front coming through. We've got some jet stream energy. We've got the upper low that's going to swing through the Mid-Atlantic as well. So that's all going to contribute to some thunderstorm chances. We see that down here continuing even into the overnight. Got to watch South Carolina and North Carolina for some thunderstorms, which may keep their packing a punch here until that point. Let's zoom into Raleigh in the Triangle. We've got Fayetteville and Wilmington here on the map. This is Tuesday afternoon. You start to see some of those storms develop. This continues through the dinner hour. The ride home from work could be a pretty stormy one. But even at night, so this is now 9 o'clock, we've got storms that will be moving here off the coast as we get into the overnight hours. Little rain lingering behind it, but we'll have to keep an eye on that risk for severe weather. Again, we've got those stronger winds aloft, which will help with giving those storms a little extra boost, Greg.
Yeah, if it's not storms, you're in a place where we really have not seen a whole lot of heat this summer.
Yeah.
Things are changing around, and that heat is going to expand.
No, it's a big pattern change.
Big pattern change.
Yeah, it'll affect storm risks as well, which
Indeed.
we will be talking about. Now, even without severe storms, we're going to see buckets and buckets of rain, and rain your batteries and your smoke detector, right? So you kind of get on that habit.
There would be nice if there's like a little blinker or a beep, just like hoping that you'd be able to see through your windshield.
Maybe we should do it Christmas and July 4th.
There you go. That's all. Then you never forget.
There was a few years in a row my husband was getting me windshield wipers for Christmas. It was a great gift, actually. Great. Can you also put them on for me?
How romantic is
that? It was very useful, though. Yeah. All right. Well, you can go to X or previously Twitter, and now Threads as well. I forgot to post it there. I'll get that there. Just send us your comments, and you can share your pics and video by using the hashtag YesTV. In the Pacific. Let's talk more about that when it comes to the tropics and what we are dealing with here. So we do have a couple of systems lined up. First of all, with regards to Hawaii, anything will track south of there. Nothing will be very strong. So when it gets to that vicinity, so that's key. We have Tropical Storm Greg leading disturbance. Then we have Hurricane Fernanda, which has been quite strong, actually. But we are watching that encounter some air very quickly. That will be much drier. And so we will watch here the change in intensity to change rapidly. So 125 miles per hour right now. It is a Cat 3. It's well away from land. And as we see it move into that drier air, it will decrease in intensity, and we will see that over the next several days. I mean, watch how quickly. 125 right now. By Thursday, down below hurricane status to a tropical storm at 70 miles per hour, and then continuing on that westbound track, but weakening to 35 miles per hour by the time we get to Friday evening. So that drier air will definitely take a toll on the strength of that system. And that leading disturbance that we're watching out here, Tropical Storm Greg, we're watching it there. It, too, is not expected to have any significant strengthening here. Right now, it's 40 miles per hour. It's a tropical storm, and it's located more than 1,000 miles away from Hilo. And again, well south of there as well. Let's track that. We're going to watch it here over the next week. That general westward movement is what we'll see. We're not anticipating a lot of additional intensity, maybe up to about 50 miles per hour over the next 2 days, 48 hours or so. But then after that, decreasing in intensity back down below tropical storm strength by Friday evening at 35 miles per hour. So that's what's happening in the Eastern Pacific here. This has been busier lately, of course, than the Atlantic. But as we look ahead, Greg, to what's happening in the Atlantic, a couple more disturbances coming off the coast of Africa this week.
Yeah, it feels like things are going to start picking up in the Atlantic right on cue. It's about middle of August is about when we normally see that happen.
Right.
So, Jen, thank you very much. Let's have a look at this.
Again, the island of Maui coming together in the wake of tragedy. A temporary shelter has been set up at the war. You can stay with the Weather Channel for continuing coverage of the wildfires in Hawaii. Our Jim Cantori will be live on the island with more stories of survival, and that's coming up at 3 p.m. Eastern. Greg, you've been, but it's certainly been a very tough to take summer here along the Gulf Coast. Now, it's been hot off and on in Charlotte. Today's one of those on times. In Charlotte, North Carolina, we're going to 95 degrees today. That's outside. Inside your vehicle, it gets dangerously hot very quickly. In just 10 minutes, 114 degrees. In 30 minutes, we're talking temperatures rising to 129 degrees. Beat the heat. Check the back seat. Make sure kids and pets are not stuck in cars here. This is going to be a dangerous heat that temperatures will very quickly rise today across a lot of the South. Now, let's go to Portland, Oregon. We're going to be even hotter. 106 degrees in the forecast. And so that's the outside air temperature. The inside, your car air temperature will be 125 in 10 minutes. In 30 minutes, 140 degrees. In just 10 minutes, it's unbelievably hot right here. So beat the heat. Check the back seat. We have a heat wave that's building in the Pacific Northwest. Want to talk more about that. It's not going to be the humidity that you have in the South that Greg was talking about, but we do have some pretty hot times for us here building on in. And we look at the heat warnings, the excessive heat warnings, as well as the heat advisories that are in place, all of Washington and Oregon and down into California as well here. We are watching for that heat. Now, this big ridge of high pressure is going to be building, and that's what's allowing the heat to continue to build. That's going to be our story for several days as we get into this heat wave. Temperatures today get to the 90s. We were oh so close the past couple of days in Seattle, but we get to 93 today. Portland down through Medford. That's really where we feel the core of it, where temperatures are up at 111 in Medford, Oregon. And it'll be record-breaking. Yakima, Washington going to 103. That would break the old record. Olympia, Washington, 97. That's a record breaker as well. Medford, that 111, yes, that would break a record. And we'll do the same thing, smashing records, actually, in places like Eugene and Salem, Oregon. All right, so tomorrow, the heat continues. The potential records continue as well here. This is a multi-day heat wave with a pattern that, again, is going to be slow to change. Big ridge of high pressure staying on, and that means potential record heat for us right here. Yakima, 108. Portland, we're going to 104. Again, breaking that record. Spokane, look at our numbers. We're going up here. Today will be 98 degrees. Average temperatures are in the 80s. We're going to the triple digits, and we'll see that Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. Friday back down into the 90s here, but still running above average even with that. Now, this is a pattern that we'll see through this week. By the time we get into next week, we're going to start to see things change, and the pattern will take a dip dip across the west, and that will allow our temperatures to even get below average, at least the average. But in the east, then we start to build things back up with a big expansive ridge that builds over the entire eastern part of the country here, and that's going to send numbers above average all the way up into places that are sitting in the 40s and 50s this morning in the upper Midwest. Well, speaking of the Tennessee Valley, and then we got to keep an eye on what happens to this whole zone tomorrow. So we're going to take a look at the eastern seaboard. There's an area of possible storms stretching from Boston all the way down through Savannah and maybe even getting close to, say, Jekyll Island. We're going to be watching, though, the risk for severe in a more narrow area right in here across eastern Virginia, the Delmarva. We've got to look at North Carolina as well. Dew points are going to be pooling up across this area. We've got a front coming in, and behind the front, dew points do drop off. You get at least a short break in some of that summertime humidity all the way down into parts of the south into Tennessee. Enjoy it when you get it. It's not going to last long. But out ahead of it, you've got the increase in dew points and the increase in instability throughout the day. We've got that daytime heating playing a role here in allowing storms to really get some energy to build up strong, grow tall into the sky. That could mean severe weather. So we got to look for that here, especially in the zone, watching from eastern North Carolina. And just watch the timing. This is before lunchtime. Once you get past lunchtime, now this is about 2 or 3 o'clock, well, we've had all day to heat up and, again, get some of that instability growing. We're going to see Charlotte to Raleigh, the chance for thunderstorms, possible severe weather. We'll keep an eye on Richmond, the Hampton Roads area, and Norfolk. We've got that chance of thunderstorms going severe. And then even into this evening, this is 8 o'clock, thunderstorms will be moving, and there'll still be instability to work with here, watching all the way to the coast, including around Wilmington in North Carolina. We'll be watching that then overnight, heading offshore, and things dwindling after that point. So, Richmond, let's take a closer look at your forecast for tomorrow. This is 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and after that time, we start to see the storms move in. Some of them popping up, most of them moving in, coming in from west to east, and we'll see that right through the evening after about 10 o'clock or so. Then we start to get an improvement in our weather as everything pushes east. This front's a big deal. We've got some pretty strong winds aloft associated with it, so it definitely will give us some extra oomph into everything that we're working with here across this area. Upper level low kind of hangs up there a little farther to the north here, so thankfully everything's not all co-located together. There'll be some severe weather, but there also could be some heavy rainfall, and we do think that that concern is across North Carolina into Virginia. Then we jump forward to Wednesday. This is an active pattern. We've got another system swinging through on Wednesday back to Minnesota and Minneapolis for the risk of severe weather on Wednesday. Greg?
Well, you know what? Wow, I don't know the answer to that. It's possible that even just sitting and doing nothing, they will wear down with the elements.
Right, and then like dry out. I almost wonder if it's better to have a little rain.
Maybe so.
And make sure that you're using your wipers. Through the mid-morning hours, I'm meteorologist Jen Carfagno.
And I'm Dr. Greg Postell. We've got plenty to talk about with Hawaii and the disaster, what's left behind in the historic town of Lahaina. Rubble and ashes, unfortunately, and crews are still combing through all of it.
Yes, and in addition to the latest from Hawaii, we are watching the East Coast. We've got the potential of severe storms later today. There's a torcon from Chicago to New York with the greatest risk centered in several major cities. So we're going to take you into this forecast and talk more about that as well.
And today's big deal?
It was some strong winds that did some damage in Oklahoma. Once the storms hit Missouri, the main damage issue was too much rainfall and the flooding that has happened. There were some water rescues overnight. We saw some of the heaviest of rain in a couple of zones, one near Springfield, the other over here in the southeastern corner of the state. And rain is ongoing right now, and you see that on the move. You can really get a sense of where everything's happening when you look at the water vapor here. Water vapor always tells the story. Where's the energy that's going to get all of this stuff going? Where's the moisture? Well, that's right here where you see the bright green. It's not as much as we had before, so that's a good thing in terms of the rainfall potential of these storms. This thing right here now pivoting into Iowa, that's our upper level low, and that's one piece of energy, the main piece that's going to be coming east along with some jet stream winds to help invigorate some thunderstorms later today here. But at the moment, not everything is all together. So we are seeing some storms out there, nothing at severe limits though, and there's even less lightning right now than there was last hour in Tennessee and into Kentucky and also up here into Wisconsin and northern Illinois. But there's still some. So if you hear thunder, you know the drill. Thunder roars, go indoors. We still have a flash flood warning that's in effect for parts of Dade, Greene, and Lawrence counties. This is in the Springfield area. This is where we saw that big rain overnight, and some estimates more than 7 inches here. You can see just to the south and to the west of Springfield, it was about 5.5 inches of rainfall estimated in that area. So, of course, make sure that you are driving around any water-covered roadways. Turn around, don't drown. Take another route if your path is covered by water. And I've seen some reports coming in that there are roads covered by water. Now, up into Paducah, Cape Girardeau, Poplar Bluff, we've got a flood watch here. This goes to this morning for the rain that is happening right now, which has been heavy at times. We're keeping an eye on that. It's mainly pushed out of that area, but we still have some showers ongoing. So just watching that. Nashville and Middle Tennessee, we're getting into some thunderstorms, thankfully not severe. Will be some brief, at least heavy rain there, and then we'll keep an eye on this rain as it moves up here into eastern Kentucky as well. But this is about to, I think, get reinvigorated later today with the risk for severe, which we'll talk more about here through the show. Greg.
Well, recovery efforts
have now surpassed the deadly Camp Fire that burned Paradise, California in 2018, becoming the nation's deadliest wildfire in more than a century. As recovery efforts get underway, the immediate focus in Maui is in the town of Lahaina. Meteorologist Kelly Cass has more. Firefighters are still searching for clues as to what started the fire. Coming up later this hour, our Justin Michaels takes us into neighborhoods on the island destroyed by the raging wildfires. From Monday into Tuesday, I'll pick up where Greg left off. We'll be watching the front, tracking east. Out ahead of it, chance of storms from southern New England all the way down the coast. Now, there'll be some storms ongoing through the overnight here. But then I think we'll get a break, and we're going to be watching for new thunderstorms to develop. And this is what they'll have to work with. Dew points on the increase. You see the winds coming in from the south. That's bringing up the moisture, kind of all pulling up here. Behind it, we do actually have some drier and more comfortable air coming in, and you get a break from the humidity for at least a little bit. So enjoy that when you get that behind the front. But out ahead of it, now we've got the ingredients coming together. So we're in that warm sector. We've got the higher dew points. I showed you that. The instability will be building here, thanks especially to some of the daytime heating that we'll get. North Carolina, Virginia, we're right in the middle of all these things coming together. So here's a look at where the thunderstorms start developing about soon after lunchtime. I think you'll really start to see a lot of the activity go, continuing to push eastbound as we get through the afternoon. Charlotte, Raleigh, 3-4 o'clock-ish here. And I know a lot of kids are back at school, so now we're talking about the time the kids are getting off the bus. There may be severe weather. At the very least, there could be storms with lightning, which is a concern. We see that here continuing eastbound through the evening, disrupting your soccer practices or your dinner out, definitely disrupting a late night walk on the beach there. And we'll be watching for some thunderstorms here continuing even after you go to bed. Now moving off the coast here, maybe still affecting us in Columbia with a few lingering showers at that point. Raleigh, let's zoom into you and the whole triangle area. We've got to look at your afternoon where thunderstorms develop here just before the time of rush hour that could make for a slow ride home from work. I-95 would be affected by that here. Then after about the dinner hour, we see storms pushing east. Could be a line of thunderstorms along it. You got to watch for, again, all modes of severe weather. Damaging winds would be the main threat, though, that we would see with thunderstorms tomorrow. We've got Wilmington, North Carolina. You're in that even into overnight hours here. You still have thunder rumbling out there, but things are weakening in terms of the risk for severe as we get into early Wednesday morning. Now, the other side of all of this,
west, the southern and the Pacific Northwest portions. But next week, we're going to be dealing with the expansion of that heat wave. It's going to include places that haven't been that hot this summer.
That are in the 40s this morning and 50s.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And we're going to see Minneapolis is going to be way into the 90s, maybe pushing 100 degrees.
Yeah. All right. Well, we will talk more about that coming up, but also talking about storms, that even without severe storms, rain, which is what's been the case lately.
Indeed.
For tropics in the eastern Pacific here to see if there is anything coming your way in Hawaii and elsewhere. So we've got a couple of areas that we're keeping an eye on. There's a new area to watch. We've got Hurricane Fernando and also Tropical Storm Greg. Now, these two leading disturbances, both are going to track south of Hawaii. So let's talk about them. We'll start with our Hurricane Fernando. And you can see this little pinhole eye that it had right here. It is really increased in a hurry, but in terms of intensity. But I want to point out that see this sort of edge. This is the edge between where there's moisture and where there's not at all. We've got a lot of dry air that this is going to be tracking into as it continues on that westbound track. So right now it's located about 700 miles southwest of the southern tip of Baja California. It's a Cat 3 with 125 mile per hour winds. It is moving to the west at 8, so it's moving away from land. It's not having an impact on Mexico. It won't have an impact on Hawaii either. You'll watch this as we get into the next several days. Within 48 hours, it really comes down in intensity, and by Thursday, it's a tropical storm, and then by Friday, it's a tropical depression here. Thanks ingesting all that dry air that it's going to be moving into. So that's key in its path. Now, you see this big plume of dry air there in between it and Greg, which we have as a tropical storm out here. You might be wondering, is that going to strengthen? No, it's not likely to. It's about 1,100 miles away from Hilo, Hawaii to the east-southeast. You can see actually how far it is south of here. And it's going to stay on this westbound track, so we're not really expecting it to get close to Hawaii, not going to change the moisture, bring rainfall to Hawaii. And really, it's not going to have any impact at all when you see how far away it is and how weak it is, where winds are going to remain below hurricane strength here, maybe increasing to 50 miles per hour. But beyond that here, decreasing in intensity. That was Tropical Storm Greg. Now, the next area to watch has a 90% chance of developing here. Pretty active time for us. All of these disturbances that have been coming in. This next one we have to keep an eye on, because the area to watch is closer to the Mexican coast here for the next 7 days here. And again, a 90% chance of developing. So this could have an impact here on the west coast of Mexico. We're going to keep an eye on this. At the very least, it will increase the waves here, but we'll have to see how close it gets in terms of bringing rain or wind. That's what's happening in the Eastern Pacific. The Atlantic side of things, we have a few more disturbances this week moving off the coast of Africa, but so far we've been in a quiet time.
I have a confession for you, Jen.
Yeah?
I had nothing to do with Tropical Storm Greg.
We thought so.
I know. I'm just letting everybody know that it's not related at all.
You didn't throw your name into the hat.
Right.
Yeah.
Very good. But let's go to the Atlantic side. See these images that there really is nothing left of so much of Lahaina.
I know.
It's amazing how complete the destruction is.
The scale of this here is overwhelming. I know, especially for the people there of Hawaii and the island of Maui coming together in the wake of tragedy. Stay with the Weather Channel for continuing coverage of the wildfires in Hawaii. Our Jim Cantori will be live on the island with more stories of survival. That's coming up at 3 p.m. Eastern. Greg? Of course, the outside air temperature is one thing. Inside your vehicle, it also gets dangerously hot very quickly. We want to take a look at a place like Charlotte, North Carolina. 95 degrees today. It's going to be hot. There's lots of excessive heat warnings throughout the entire South. That's outside air. Inside your car, 114 in just 10 minutes. In 30 minutes, we've got 129 degrees. Beat the heat. Check the back seat. Make sure kids and pets are not left in cars. They heat up just so fast. The outside air temperature, of course, makes a difference here. And the hotter it is outside, the quicker the inside of the vehicle is going to heat up. Look at the heat in Portland, Oregon. Now, this is a different heat. I'm going to talk about that. But 106 for you today in Portland. 106 inside your car. 125 is what it will be in just 10 minutes. And in 30 minutes, we're talking 140 degrees. A very dangerous situation for anyone left in a car. So beat the heat. Make sure kids can't get into cars. They know how to get out. Should they indeed get in to play, or they get stuck, we want to make sure that everyone stays safe. This heat wave in the northwest here is building, and we've had a pretty nice stretch here without the heat, but now we're back in it, and in a big way. Excessive heat warnings are up. That's everywhere in bright pink. We got the heat advisories elsewhere, all the way down through the Central Valley in California. It's not going to have the same amount of humidity like Greg talked about in the deep south, but it is going to be excessively hot, and the numbers even higher because of that, because you don't have the humidity. Most times air can heat even more when it doesn't have quite the amount of humidity in it. Big ridge of high pressure, the reason why this is happening. We got 106 in Portland, 111 in Medford. Yes, these will be record-breaking temperatures. Yakima going to 103. That'll break a record. We'll do it in Olympia. Medford, that 111 is record-breaking. Eugene, 109, is smashing the old record of 101 degrees here in Salem, Oregon. 108, smashing that old record as well. In addition to the heat, we also have a fire concern out here as well. There's a fire danger with red flag warnings that are up. We are not just hot, we are dry. And so concerns are that if something sparks a fire here, there could be a lot of fuel for it. Fire weather watch up in northern parts of Montana as well. But really worried about this area. We've got a couple of ongoing fires out here, like the Sourdough Fire in Washington, the Lookout Fire in Oregon. And so just make sure do your part to not allow any additional fires to start. Tomorrow, we've got more heat and more records. We've got a lot of spots, like even Spokane, going to 102. That will break the old record of 99 degrees. And here's what's coming up here on pattern. Might see shelf clouds like that across the east. We've got to look at the forecast for tomorrow. So we've got a front today crossing the Midwest, gets through the Appalachians, and then we're going to see it get to the East Coast tomorrow. Eastern seaboard from Boston all the way down through Savannah. We've got the chance of thunderstorms, and especially here in the Delmarva, eastern Virginia, eastern North Carolina, there is the risk of storms going severe. Dew points, they'll be up, especially in the zone. We're going to see some dew points in the 70s, and that will definitely be one of the ingredients that we have to keep an eye on out there. Air that has higher moisture and higher dew points lifts easier. So we're going to forms clouds easier and bigger clouds easier. So we're going to have to watch all of that. Here comes the front. That's the lifting mechanism. We'll have some daytime heating just thanks to the timing of everything going on. So that's really going to be here, I think, at its peak across North Carolina, down to South Carolina. Let's look at it to see how things all kind of come together, watching through the afternoon. After lunchtime, really we start to see things start lining up with the risk of thunderstorms developing. Here comes the front. Out ahead of it is where we'll see those thunderstorms into western and west central North Carolina, central Virginia, including around Richmond. Storms going through the Hampton Roads area in Norfolk and maybe up towards, say, the beaches of Delaware, including around Rehoboth. You've got that chance for storms. But we get you into the late night, there'll still be some storms ongoing. This is now overnight, 4 a.m. Still thunderstorms just offshore of Charleston, and we'll have to keep an eye on some lingering activity from Columbia in South Carolina, maybe still back into Raleigh. May not be severe at that point, but still could see and hear some thunderstorms. All right, so closer view at Virginia. This is starting the clock at about 2 or 3 o'clock. Thunderstorms develop through the afternoon. This is dinner time. Not looking good for the ride home from work. If that commutes on 64, that could be a tough one. And there may be a few showers lingering beyond that, but improving as we get into the overnight. Greg?
Well, drones were back in action high above Rockaway.
If that would win, I change them when they become a problem.
Right. Yeah. That's not a bad way to do it, right?
Yeah. Although I think it's good to get on a plane twice a year.
Very good.
At least. Maybe once a year. Much for choosing America's Morning Headquarters to get you through the mid-morning hours. I'm meteorologist Jen Carfagno.
And I'm Dr. Greg Postel. And, you know, what's left behind in this historic town of Lahaina is really just rubble and ashes. And crews are still combing through it all. Yeah,
in addition to the latest from Hawaii, we are watching the East Coast, the potential of severe storms later today. We've got a torcon out here that stretches from Chicago to New York, the greatest risk centered in several major cities. So we'll get you more on updates on this forecast as well.
And in today's big deal, we'll have your wind.
Oklahoma, that knocked down some trees. There's some cleanup you guys are doing there today. We've got thunderstorms that went through Missouri, dropping really heavy rainfall in two areas, one in near Springfield, the other here in southeastern Missouri. Lots of flooding reports came out of both of those spots here, some big totals. And now the storms have been on the move, and they've been weakening, but I wanted to show you all of that. So two things to look at. I could look at more, but I'm going to show you two things to point out on our water vapor, where we've got our upper level low, this thing right here. This has been pivoting in and going to keep doing so right over Iowa. So that's some energy that we're dealing with up there. We also have this big batch of moisture. That's what left the flooding rain in Missouri last night. Now that you can see it's moved east, we have less green on the water vapor, indicating less moisture at the mid levels of the atmosphere. So at the moment, we're not dealing with the torrential rain, there's big downpours like we had last night. There's even less lightning happening here in Tennessee and Kentucky. So that's some good news. Now we're starting to see a few more thunderstorms up here into central Ohio, just one or two right now, but there'll be more later on today. So just keep an eye on that. And then these thunderstorms here, they've been ongoing. Again, not as much lightning as we had maybe a few hours ago, but we do still have some, and want to make sure that, you know, lightning is dangerous. Even if 50 degrees outside here, like for some of you it is, you just want to always make sure when thunder roars, go indoors. Now we've got some rain, just plain old rain for you coming into Milwaukee and up towards Green Bay. It's kind of a chilling morning with the rain up across this area. The upper level low is going to be on the move through this zone. And you know what I always say about upper level lows, never trust them. They can be slow moving. They can sometimes overdo it in terms of the amount of moisture they can squeeze out of the atmosphere. So we've got flood watches up. Madison, Milwaukee, Sheboygan, all under that. Wisconsin, Chicago down here in Illinois, also under that flash flood watch. The flash flood watch farther south was able to be dropped here. Thankfully, the rain has moved out. But again, still concerns, maybe some remnant water left on roadways, especially watching south of Springfield. Make sure you're careful out there driving today. Thankful to get a break in the rain. Well, past the deadly Camp Fire that burned Paradise, California in 2018, becoming the nation's deadliest wildfire in more than a century. As recovery efforts get underway, the immediate focus in Maui is in the town of Lahaina. Meteorologist Kelly Cass has more. Firefighters are still searching for clues as to what started the fire. Coming up later this hour, our Justin Michaels takes us into neighborhoods on the island destroyed by the raging wildfires. Well, time out there before the storms move your way, and I'll show you the timing of all of this. The risk of storms tomorrow, picking up where Greg left off here. The front is heading to the east coast, and we're going to see out ahead of it thunderstorms from southeastern New England all the way down through Georgia. The chance of thunderstorms going severe, especially here in that bright red where we're looking at the Delmarva, down into Virginia, and even North Carolina. Dew points, they'll be up. You'll feel it. It'll be humid out there, especially, I think, right in that zone where we're looking at that enhancement for the risk for severe weather. Dew points in the 70s. Behind it, there's a nice cool down, actually, with some drier air coming in behind that front. So once you get that west or northwest wind, enjoy it. It's not going to last that long, but you will get some improvement. But that said, out ahead of it, it's going to be kind of crazy with some storms going on, and we'll see that through the day tomorrow. Again, out ahead of the front's going to be the lift. An air that has more moisture in it lifts easier. So higher dew points means air can lift easier and grow to become cumulus clouds and cumulonimbus clouds. And we'll see that especially in areas that get a lot of daytime heating going. That helps increase the instability. We'll watch in North Carolina. You're right in that zone, kind of where everything coming together back towards eastern Virginia as well. This is about 11 o'clock here tomorrow. Right before lunchtime. A couple of showers out there, maybe coming through the Appalachians. But through the afternoon, these storms and new ones that form will be popping and really tapping into more of the available ingredients out there. So they have better chance of being severe. We see that through about 8 or 9 o'clock or so, approaching the eastern seaboard there, continuing just beyond. And then once we get past midnight, things weakening and moving off the coast. And you're probably left with an easier time for sleeping, maybe a little bit of rain on your rooftop there, but likely the severe weather is over. Now, Raleigh, let's take a closer view. Again, the timing for you. We start maybe a brief shower early in the day, but the big stuff comes in afternoon. Continuing through the evening, this is 6 o'clock, heading eastbound, 17 travelers here. I know traffic is already an issue. Now we're going to bring in thunderstorms here to be another issue about 8, 9 o'clock or so. Again, these could be severe. So if you can, try to stay off the roads and make sure you have a place to go to seek shelter if indeed warnings are issued for your area. We're watching those thunderstorms through the overnight, weakening, but again, watching for that chance. Now, as we get you into tomorrow, watching this whole front move east, where is the upper level ingredients? It's up here. Here's that low. Here's the stronger winds. So there'll be some spotty showers up here. And again, the potential, I think, for maybe some stronger storms in that area. But the zone to watch where everything comes together is right here into the mid-Atlantic. We've got the chance for heavy rain along with the risk of some damaging winds here as we watch that storm threat. Now, the other threat out there is the heat, and that's been pretty widespread.
It's the most oppressive weather. As much as I like the high dew points, that was an incredible event. And we're seeing that along the Gulf Coast today.
Day after day, really?
Day after day.
Where was that?
That was in Madison, Wisconsin, and that was in July, the great heat wave of July 1995.
Yeah.
And we had dew points in Iowa in the low to mid 80s, so temperatures near 100 degrees. I've never seen widespread heat indices that high in the Midwest since. That was a long time ago, almost 30 years ago, and the heat indices were near 130.
Yeah, no doubt. It's part of the agriculture too.
The evapotranspiration, the breathing from the corn helped out a lot. And the fact that we had this crazy air mass, which was so capped, there was not even a cloud in the sky.
Well, there is a heat wave coming back to parts of the Midwest, and we're going to keep you apprised of that here in the coming days. But first, back to the storms. You know, even without severe storms, it's interesting. Kathy's in California. She said after summer. Dan's in the UP of Michigan. He said after winter. So it really does depend where you are.
Yeah, there you go.
Threatening us here in Hawaii, and we are seeing a number of areas that we're watching over the eastern Pacific, but the two leading disturbances are going to track that direction, but track south of the Hawaiian Islands. So let's talk about those. We've got Tropical Storm Greg and Hurricane Fernanda. Fernanda, if you look at this hurricane, it's got a little tiny pinhole eye. It was very strong here. It got very strong very quickly, but that's when it was in a more favorable environment. Now look what it's running up against. This is all dry air. All of this orange you see here is very dry air, and so it's going to be moving into that environment. You know, it's going to take some time to wind down. It's 130 miles per hour right now, so even increased in strength from the last advisory. Now it's a Category 4, but it's far away from the coast of Mexico. It's far away from the coast of Hawaii, and it's just an ocean storm here at this point, but again has increased in strength. That tiny little pinhole eye is kind of that telltale sign that it is pretty fierce there around that center of circulation. Now it's going to move into that dry air, and that is going to cut down on its ability to maintain that strength here. It'll take a little time, but by tomorrow morning we think it'll be down to 120 miles per hour. Still formidable, still in the open ocean, and then beyond that, going beyond hurricane force strength to a tropical storm by Thursday. By Saturday, it's a tropical depression. depression. Again, all well south of the Hawaiian Islands. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at Tropical Storm Greg, because Greg has now entered into the central Pacific basin. So it moved out of the East Pack. It's in the central pack here. That just matters as to which office tracks it. But now we see where Greg is. But so that's Fernanda. No, that's Greg, sorry. It's 40 miles per hour, and it is more than 1,300 miles south of Hawaii. So it is quite far away. It is not that strong of a storm. The high pressure to the north of Hawaii is not that strong either. So this will not have any impact on Hawaii. The moisture field is very small and condensed. That won't reach up there. The wind field is going to continue to either maintain strength or then weaken as we get into the next several days. So we're not expecting a lot out of Greg. Tropical Storm Greg, that is. Then we get to the latest area to watch, has a 90% chance of developing, and we're going to be watching this here. This is closer to land than any of the others that we've watched lately, closer to Mexico. So we'll have to keep an eye on this one to see if there's any impacts, possibility, of course, of surf. It will always be one, and then you have to see if that moisture extends out and affects us on land as well. So that's what's happening in the Eastern Pacific. And again, we've got Hurricane Fernando. We've got Tropical Storm Greg in the Pacific.
Which I have nothing to do with.
Nothing to do with.
Nothing.
You did not put your name in the hat for that. But nothing in the Atlantic right yet. Things look like they're changing a little.
I think you're right about that. We've been watching some of those boiling skies for a while over the Atlantic, and I think in about a week they'll come alive at least a little bit. Jen, thank you very much. Let's have a look at the satellite pictures, because
stay with the Weather Channel for continuing coverage of the wildfires in Hawaii. Our Jim Cantori will be live on the island with more stories of survival. That's coming up at 3 p.m. Eastern. The outside air temperature is one thing. Inside your vehicle, it also gets dangerously hot very quickly. We want to take a look at a place like Charlotte, North Carolina. 95 degrees today. It's going to be hot. There's lots of excessive heat warnings throughout the entire South. That's outside air. Inside your car, 114 in just 10 minutes. In 30 minutes, we've got 129 degrees. Beat the heat. Check the back seat. Make sure kids and pets are not left in cars. They heat up just so fast. The outside air temperature, of course, makes a difference here. And the hotter it is outside, the quicker the inside of the vehicle is going to heat up. Look at the heat in Portland, Oregon. Now, this is a different heat. I'm going to talk about that, but 106 for you today in Portland. 106 inside your car. 125 is what it will be in just 10 minutes, and in 30 minutes, we're talking 140 degrees. A very dangerous situation for anyone left in a car. So beat the heat. Make sure kids can't get into cars. They know how to get out. Should they indeed get in to play, or they get stuck, we want to make sure that everyone stays safe. This heat wave in the Northwest here is building, and we've had a pretty nice stretch here without the heat, but now we're back in it, and in a big way. Excessive heat warnings are up. That's everywhere in bright pink. We got the heat advisories elsewhere, all the way down through the Central Valley in California. It's not going to have the same amount of humidity like Greg talked about in the deep south, but it is going to be excessively hot. The number is even higher because of that, because you don't have the humidity. Sometimes air can, and most times air can heat even more when it doesn't have quite the amount of humidity in it. Big ridge of high pressure, the reason why this is happening. We got 106 in Portland, 111 in Medford. Yes, these will be record-breaking temperatures. Yakima going to 103. That'll break a record. We'll do it in Olympia. Medford, that 111 is record-breaking. Eugene, 109, is smashing the old record of 101 degrees here in Salem, Oregon. 108, smashing that old record as well. In addition to the heat, we also have a fire concern out here as well. There's a fire danger with red flag warnings that are up. We are not just hot, we are dry, and so concerns are that if something sparks a fire here, there could be a lot of fuel for it. Fire weather watch up in northern parts of Montana as well, but really worried about this area. We've got a couple of ongoing fires out here, like the Sourdough Fire in Washington, the Lookout Fire in Oregon, and so just make sure do your part to not allow any additional fires to start. Tomorrow, we've got more heat and more records. We've got a lot of spots, like even Spokane, going to 102. That will break the old record of 99 degrees. And here's what's coming up here on pattern. Might see shelf clouds like that across the east. We've got to look at the forecast for tomorrow. So we've got a front today crossing the Midwest, gets through the Appalachians, and then we're going to see it get to the East Coast tomorrow. Eastern seaboard from Boston all the way down through Savannah. We've got the chance of thunderstorms, and especially here in the Delmarva, Eastern Virginia, Eastern North Carolina, there is the risk of storms going severe. Dew points, they'll be up, especially in the zone. We're going to see some dew points in the 70s, and that will definitely be one of the ingredients ingredients that we have to keep an eye on out there. Air that has higher moisture and higher dew points lifts easier. So we're going to forms clouds easier and bigger clouds easier. So we're going to have to watch all of that. Here comes the front. That's the lifting mechanism. We'll have some daytime heating just thanks to the timing of everything going on. So that's really going to be here, I think, at its peak across North Carolina, down to South Carolina. Let's look at it to see how things all kind of come together, watching through the afternoon. After lunchtime, really we start to see things start lining up with the risk of thunderstorms developing. Here comes the front. Out ahead of it is where we'll see those thunderstorms into western and west central North Carolina, central Virginia, including around Richmond. Storms going through the Hampton Roads area in Norfolk and maybe up towards, say, the beaches of Delaware, including around Rehoboth. You've got that chance for storms. But we get you into the late night, there'll still be some storms ongoing. This is now overnight, 4 a.m. Still thunderstorms just offshore of Charleston, and we'll have to keep an eye on some lingering activity from Columbia in South Carolina, maybe still back into Raleigh. May not be severe at that point, but still could see and hear some thunderstorms. All right, so closer view at Virginia. This is starting the clock at about 2 or 3 o'clock. Thunderstorms develop through the afternoon. This is dinner time. Not looking good for the ride home from work. If that commutes on 64, that could be a tough one. And there may be a few showers lingering beyond that, but improving as we get into the overnight. Great.
Well, drones were back in action high above
areas. If that would win, I change them when they become a problem.
Right.
Yeah.
That's not a bad way to do it, right?
Yeah. Although I think it's good to get on a plan twice a year.
Very good.
At least. Maybe once a year.